Big squill means we're live. Welcome, Evan. How are you doing today, sir?
Good, really good. Thanks. Doing great.
Even better after that pig squeal, right?
Much better after the pig squeal. Yeah, it's pretty late. It's 12:30 in the morning or whatever. 00:30. I'm not used to European time even after 10 years, but over here in Spain where I live. But excited to talk.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for showing up, even though it's late here. You did talk to me about your new Dungeon Mastery app that you've been working on today. I'm kind of excited to see it. You showed me a little bit, but do you want to go ahead and show some more now?
Yeah, well, I'll set the stage a bit first. So
Sure.
I think, as front enders, whenever you're working on stuff, you want to, and trying new technologies, whatever it might be, right? You want to have something that you're working on to build on your own project. Like you, for example, I guess you're learning React by building out a role-playing game that you're used to doing, right?
Yeah.
So I've always done the same thing, and sometimes more successfully than others. But I don't know, maybe 9 months or so ago, I'll backtrack a little more. Since I was a kid, I wanted to play Dungeons and Dragons, and just never came up. I was, the people that played they were the 70s crowd usually, and I was an 80s kid. So it just was, sorry, you're too young to play, or no, we don't play that anymore. That's for geeks, that's for nerds. So it never happened. And then
I thought in Stranger Things they were 80s kids that were playing this.
Yeah, but they were older in the 80s, right?
Oh,
that was like 83 or something like that, and they were already 10 or 11, so they were born in the 70s.
Gotcha.
So yeah. Anyway, the point is, it didn't materialize, and college went by, and then get married, have kids. It doesn't happen. But I was like, you know what? I've had enough of waiting. My 12-year-old's old enough to play. My wife is interested. Let's put together a home game. And I started campaigning, and I was building up all these notes as the DM of, this person did this. This is what we did in this session. This is how long it was. Eventually, I was like, okay, I want to build an app for this. I've been doing Angular a lot in my side project. I'll use that for sure. What's this NX thing I've been hearing about? And I put together the code base using my first NX workspace.
Awesome, man.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's perfect, but in the end, what I've developed, and this is where I can start maybe sharing my screen.
Yeah, it's super interesting you mentioned that, though, because we kind of designed NX for these larger mono repos, right? With like all the affected stuff, and now computation caching you can use to really speed up CI builds and stuff like that. But I find it's super nice for small projects too. Like I almost maybe prefer it for small projects. It's weird that way, but
yeah, that's what I found as well. I mean, if you're using Angular anyway, you want the prescription of it, right? To say, do this. This is the more or less right way to do it, and that really helps you just not think about those parts and get. And my problem with React was always how do I do this? Oh, you can do it this way, this way, this way, this way. Well, which is the right way? Doesn't matter. Well, it does, though.
yeah, it absolutely does. And Angular already comes in and is pretty prescriptive about that. But I feel like NX kind of takes it to that next level. Like you should be doing apps and libs, and here's how you could do this. And I don't know, it helps me isolate the problems I'm wanting to work on rather than just kind of being lost in the mire, kind of like you're describing with React. So
yeah, definitely. So I can show you the app itself a bit.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah. Okay. So this is once you're already logged in. I finished off and went live with the homepage earlier today, which we might show a little bit later. But this is for the campaign I'm running currently. I've been running since last June. On a mostly a weekly basis, a little bit less than that. And these are all the notes of the different sessions we've played. So over the time period, we've gone through a lot of arcs in the story as well. And we've, in each of these, there's a session where they encounter NPCs, they do some stuff. So that was fine. The notes were good, and breaking them into these sort of sessions was also good, so I could say, yeah, this session lasted this long, was on this date, and they did this long rest as well, because I wanted the data, like we've been playing, they've known each other for 34 days at this stage. It seems like a lot longer because we've been playing for a year and a half, but it's only been in game time 34. I'd have to do that math all the time as we played to make sure that it's accurate. And the app does it for me. Same thing as time we've actually played, keeping track of that. It's an impressive stat. But also I started thinking, okay, well, I create a lot of NPCs, and you can see here like the list of NPCs on the side. This is not, I'm not even done porting it all over. I just got a new mechanism in place, and this is maybe half of what they've encountered, because it builds up. Like they go into a town and they need to meet one shopkeeper, but then someone else goes to another shop and they meet another shopkeeper. And so building up that list, I wanted to make it easy to see, like, okay, where is this person? Where did they encounter them? Which arc was it in at the very least? Who interacted with what objects, maybe locations and things. So to break it down a little more simply, we've got players. So these are the main players that are here. And I haven't filled in many details, but you can go into them individually and write details about them and which arcs they appeared in as you type those main sessions and who they're linked to. So for example, Merlina is Valadrin's sister.
That's so cool. Can you show that drop down thing again?
I'll show it again in a second. So like, for example, she was born and raised in, and I've already got the city here. The Cobalt Gates is the name of the main town.
Nice.
Oh, but if I just type I'm so happy with the way this turned out. The locations are all here, and the items and the NPCs. So if you forget what the name of something is, you can at least scroll back through the list and then choose it that way. And under the hood, awesome. What it's doing is it's linking up, that record for the Cobalt Gates to Merlina. So right now, if I close this and go into the Cobalt Gates here, you can see that Merlina links in. So you get a reference. Now, there's more work for me to do, which is great. It's nice to have a side project, right? I still like clicking on this currently does nothing. I want these to actually, when you click on them, you should be able to edit them or etc. But it is linked under the hood, and it's linked by IDs. So if I needed to change the name of this, place here to something else, and let's just say Tinamore, I'll hopefully remember to change this back later. Where is it? The Bank of Moor, Tinamore. So it changes there, but also any place that might have referenced it would also be updated without having to do much. So that kind of stuff is quite nice. I don't know. I just really enjoy it, and it's becoming useful for me as a DM as well. And that's for me the main thing that any side projects should do, right? It should be. You should eat your own dog food, or I'm sure there's a much better phrase for that.
Just solving a problem. I feel like often for me, I feel like if I get into a side project, I'm doing it more for the engineering feat, whatever that is. But to actually solve a problem, like that's really what we're doing all this stuff for, right? So
yeah, definitely. I mean that's all it is. But I think it's actually a lot, and I've already used it once or twice, in our actual sessions to be like, oh. Do you remember, 9 months ago when you encountered this person? What was that person's name? Oh, it was, which one was it again? And able to quickly drill down and find that person.
Now, this is so cool. I'm so for reasons I think we'll get into later. I am like ancillary to like D&D Twitter. And I saw a tweet come through today that was like something like "God bless the note keepers." And this seems like this is what this is.
Yeah, for sure.
God bless dungeonmastery.app. There we go.
Yeah, I hope so. And it's not like there's not other apps that do similar things. And just I like how elegant this is. My next thing I want to work on probably next week is I can do this sort of typing at and do stuff. Oh, and I can create new records from here too, which is
nice.
I finally added that in because that was really necessary. But I want a sort of one of those Algolia search autocompletes, or like I want to hit Command P. I found myself doing that, like I'm used to in VS Code.
VS Code or in the Chrome Web Tools. Yeah,
exactly. I was like Command P. Oh wait, no, I haven't.
Show me all the things.
But since it's my app, I can build that.
Yeah, that's so cool. So, is this app specific to your campaign, or is this just like a general app? If someone wanted to run a campaign, they could go to your app and make a new account.
Yeah, the point of it is that they can create new campaigns. So
Awesome.
for now, it's kind of open alpha. Anyone can join and set this up. I'll grandfather them in once we get the payment plans set up for it. But yeah, you create a new campaign. This doesn't do anything at the moment, but you give it a title and a stint, and it will create the new campaign. And then you see like, okay, well, you need to create an arc and add sessions to that, and add players, and you do all the things yourself. But that's all you need. It's pretty straightforward. I should probably do an onboarding at some stage, but I do think it's pretty straightforward.
Very cool. So the reason I'm attached or ancillary, I guess, to D&D Twitter is in the past. So I told you before we started the show, I was involved with a group of friends who were, we ended up doing a campaign. This was my only campaign that I've ever been involved with. And I ended up staying for one session, and they were all like, well, let's do it again next week. And I was like, maybe, maybe a little later. Kids tend to get in the way. So it's super cool. I think it's so cool that you're doing this with your family, though. That sounds like a really neat idea. I think our young ones are a bit too little, but we could probably do this with our older kids. So
yeah, I mean, our 6-year-old comes in occasionally, and we have a traveling squirrel that comes along with us. So in case she wants to play this, we know the squirrel is there. And honestly, she's gotten more kills in the first part of the campaign than anyone else, because I don't give her any attributes. She just rolls a d20 and she tends to roll high. So it's like, the squirrel decapitates the goblin. What do you know?
We got one of those Monty Python squirrels kind of going on here, like the
Absolutely.
bunny.
For sure. Yeah,
awesome.
I think it's great. I think it's the best of all scenarios for me. If it was just friends, I would also not be able to do it consistently, because family comes first. But since it is the family, it's so much fun, and it's such a good bonding experience. And I'm really good at like accents and things like that too. So I really can get into the role-playing part, and they don't have to, and that's fine. But I really enjoy that as well, of coming up with these different characters to surprise them with. Or yeah, it's great. It's a great family thing.
That's really cool. Well, so anyways, the group I ended up playing with, I think they kept on going on with their campaign for a while there. But we were looking at, because like we're exploring like the possibility of me doing this remotely with them, and the DM was actually remote, and so we were just looking at building some tools for them. And we got pretty far on a beta where it was just, we just wanted to create like a board was the idea, like some sort of shared board that you could like freely move pieces around. We had some like pretty nice isometric art because the DM was a graphic designer, so cool. It's always a nice little combination of stuff. But yeah, we got involved in that, and we're promoting it a little bit. So that's how I got involved in D&D Twitter. So I really don't know much about D&D at all, but I see all the memes. So
well, it's what got me back into it after all those years of sort of waiting was I started listening to a podcast called The Adventure Zone, and I really don't remember how I came upon it, but it was short and silly and hilarious, and yet by the time they the first arc of the campaign was silly, the second arc was still pretty silly, but then you could see it took off in popularity, and they just got more serious. So by the time it finished out the final arc, it was like really intense. Yeah. And I was like, okay, now I want more. And then I found Critical Role, which anyone that listens, I mean, yeah. So they're so good. They're so good. You wouldn't think you could listen to someone play D&D for 4 hours, once a week, but it's great.
But you can. Yeah.
But you can.
So for anyone who's maybe not familiar, Critical Role is a Twitch D&D game. I think it's on Twitch, right? Yeah. But it's all voice actors, so they're all like super good at playing characters and stuff. And I don't know, it's really cool, and the production value is super high. That's what I remember when we were all getting into D&D and like doing our campaign. I remember watching them all the time and thinking, man, this is so good. But at the same time, we could do this. Like,
yeah, yeah, and that is, yeah, I really like that part of it too. It's really empowering. So yeah,
yeah.
they have a lot of D&D players have their fancy miniatures and they've got their battle maps. We don't have any of that, right? My brother-in-law is remote. Our other friend that joins us is remote as well. So while we're here at home, still we can't really sort that out. And even if we did, I'm not that good at that. I'm not a good artist, and I'm much better with my words anyway. So theater of the mind is the way to go. And that's the beauty.
Yeah.
You've got some dice or a dice app, you can play. You have a good internet connection and you can hear each other, you can play.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
There's something to be said too. I think it's a similar reason why a lot of us are drawn to front end web development too. It feels like you can really bootstrap a lot by yourself. Without necessarily needing a larger team. When you get a larger team, it's definitely becomes a more interesting challenge and kind of a different challenge. But
yeah,
just feeling like, hey, I could do this. Like clearly, you've got your mastery app here, which looks, pretty cool for a one-person job. How long have you been working on this?
I mean, so like I have a full-time job and that takes a lot of energy, and I tend to take on more than I should at work as well. I do a lot of different things. Yeah. Generous with my time. But I really like doing this work. So I think I started this in January. It's probably January. So it's about 10 months.
Very cool, man.
It's a bit slow for that, but
I'm just realizing it's 10 months since January.
I know.
Like, wait, what?
Yeah, that's a bit much. No, I when I started this, I remember specifically firing up NX because I was like, okay, I think I'm ready to do the full stack thing, and I will do my backend in Nest.
Okay.
So and I did that. I built, and it was overkill, right? I'll show you a bit of code here. So I had the app. And then I also had, let's shrink down some of these. Yeah, I had the API interfaces, and then I had this mastery bit where I was using NGRX specifically. And then all of these, like the app was calling to the, proper facade and going through to do the different things. And then that was...
I hope Brett is not watching right now. He does not like these facades.
Oh, I didn't like them either at first, but then I just got kind of into them. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I don't do them quite the same way that they initially list them on the NGRX site. Like I don't like. I thought it was so weird to have dispatch separately, so I just did it this way.
Okay.
Whatever.
I go either way on facades, like in general, not just with NGRX. It could be helpful. I really don't know how often the case where I think a facade is super helpful when it could be used as like an adapter, like the adapter pattern, where you could actually switch it out for something else eventually. I think what we normally end up doing is just like pulling out the code in the facade and sticking something else in, which isn't quite the same thing, but it's close enough. Like the API stays the same. So
I guess for me, what it does is it keeps me only having in the app itself to import like one thing. And then I don't have to worry. Like, I guess it was that, when I had more than one part of the store, I was importing a lot of things, and where's the constructor? I was having to do this in a bunch of places, and that just seemed like way too verbose for what I wanted to do. So the facade just abstracts it. So now it's just mastery facade or whatever, books facade or, whatever you have. It's not a huge difference.
Yeah, it definitely helps in large projects, I feel like, with some discoverability, because it's a lot easier to inject a service and see all the methods than to be like, well, what are all the selectors again? and try to trace them all down and the actions and whatnot. So
yeah, I think it is dangerous though, right? Because I started setting up this convention for myself where occasionally I need to create a record of sorts, and the back end might take some time to respond. And the component itself, it's not good enough for me just to subscribe to the store to see when something changes, because I need to know if this particular record was created or not, right? And once you dispatch the action, it's out in thin air until it comes back.
It's a disjointed method.
Yeah, right? It's disjointed. So what I did was, when I'm using the facade, I have this add a unique identifier, and then I will dispatch that, but return the UUID so that this handles the actual what it needs to do creation-wise, but it appends a unique ID on there, and then that will sort of live only temporarily. It doesn't even get pushed to the server, but within the store. And eventually, once the effect and the reducer pushes it back in, then this UUID can be used inside a temporary subscription that's set up in the component. I guess that would be fine to put inside the effect, but it's also fine to put here in the facade. But like I said, I've started doing that as a convention. Now, if I decide to remove the facade, now I need to figure out where that actually will live. So it gets dangerous.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, anytime too where you're getting to like any kind of logic, I think inside of the facade, I start to get nervous too. So I've seen a lot of things where people will have the selector in there, but they'll like be waiting for this other value on the in the store to go true. So they'll put into where they get their observable like into a pipe where you like skip while until something else comes back, and then and I get like but then then you're losing it. Like I don't know. I'm fine with doing that inside of a component where you just inject the store. The thing that I thought was really interesting about what you said though was one of my resistances to using facades is I think part of the beauties that come with NX or NGRX rather. I'm sorry, I'm getting all my acronyms mixed up. But with NGRX, you get to the point where all you need to inject is the one store. You have to import then all of the different pieces like piecemeal for each of your selectors actions you want to dispatch. But I think it's really cool the way that comes in, and it's kind of like you build your own API right there in the component when you do things that way.
Yeah, I do like that. And yeah, it lets you be a little more explicit about things like, you want the convention of using get or select at the start of these words, but maybe you don't in the API itself. And I don't want the $ at the end here because that feels weird in the selector itself, but that's what it is. It's an observable stream that I want to subscribe to here. So, like I said, I didn't like it at first, and then I just adopted it. Where I was going with this whole thing, though, was so I'd set all this stuff up because I do that for any project. And NX, it worked really well. I had my library where I could have the store, and that was kind of separate. And then I set up the app, like the backend part of it. But you'll see that there's no backend here because eventually I got to the point where I built the whole thing out. All the actions or the effects and the service went to the backend, and it was working. And the backend, I had some mock stuff, and I was like, okay, this is ready. How do I implement a backend? Oh, I need a database. Oh, that means I need like MySQL or who knows what. And then I need to host that. And so far, everything had been free, right? And I'm like, oh, man, how am I supposed to do this? And
in memory, man.
Yeah, well, I could have done. I was kind of doing in memory.
Needs persistence.
Right? I need persistence because my brain does not hold all these notes. But yeah, so at that stage, I asked some backender friends. I was like, what's the best way? And once I started looking into it, I was like, I'm not going to be able to do this myself in any reasonable amount of time. Let me look into Firebase and Firestore.
I thought I saw that in your code, the function.
Yeah, it's there. And for me, this is one of the parts I really dislike is needing to inject the auth into the effects, but I didn't find a better place for it because I need it for like every call.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring this up. I've done some stuff before where I have like in like my little private NX workspace I do for my side stuff. I have like a module there that like will take the fire auth stuff and wrap it up and put it into NGRX because I really like working with NGRX and just like expose things that way. So that's what I'd like to do, but it took a little bit of work to get it right. But now that I have it, I just kind of reuse it all over the place. So
yeah. Well, feel free to share because I really don't like having to do this every time.
Yeah, I hear you. I've been considering doing something like open sourcing it, or at least and publishing it or something like that. But we'll see. It's not it's not super solid, and I don't want to maintain it. That's like my hesitancy.
Same reason I don't open source like anything. My GitHub is empty. Well, it's not empty, but
Yeah.
But okay. By the time I got to this stage, and I was like, okay, let's do Firebase. There was no need to have the backend anymore because that really just handles it. And so then I stripped all that out. So now it's really a proper modern front end. Just doesn't have GraphQL, but whatever. I don't really need that.
Yeah.
And Firebase has its own thing.
Yeah, I'm not sold on the GraphQL stuff. There have been times when I'm using it where I was like, oh, this really does make sense. But it's if you're using something like Firebase, it feels like the API is robust enough to kind of do a lot of that stuff, and it has the benefit of being not having the headache, and also being free for the level of projects I think we tend to make as a one-person shop. So. Yeah. Lars is actually asking in the chat, how many libraries do you have in your workspace?
Oh, well, yeah, this is not my strongest suit necessarily. So I've got the API interface, which is pretty bare, but I found some really cool TypeScript stuff that I could do, and I'm really happy with how that has turned out overall.
Yeah.
But that's really lightweight, just to make sure that it's in its own place, I guess. And I don't even think it needs all this extra config. Then I have the one for the mastery, which.
So what is mastery?
Yeah, I just named it mastery service because it's the main. I don't know. It's the core of the app, really.
Okay. So this is where you keep like all those entities we were seeing in that drop-down list. They're kind of in the slice of the store. Is that the idea?
I mean, yeah, technically, yeah. There's no other store in the app. It's all in here. Eventually, there'll be a user store, I guess. Yeah. But even that is kind of, you need that to do this, right? You need a user to actually be storing anything. So I kind of end up putting that in here too. Cool. But I break in the entities, even though I don't really feel like they're entities, they are, but I don't use them in any complex way necessarily.
Right.
And it all just kind of lives in here. And then the service calls out to actual Firebase to create records and do that sort of stuff.
Nice. Do you do stuff where you listen to the what was it called? Do you listen to the collections to see when a new?
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, so a friend asked me that the other day, and because he was like, "Oh, why do I need NGRX at all if Firebase offers this?" And I'm like, I don't want the push part of that, right? I don't want some external service telling me when things are changing in my app. I mean, I get the value in that, but for me, that's just, I can't base my architecture around that. That seems like an irresponsible decision. What if it goes offline? I can't use the app anymore? That's it. I mean, you can't use my app currently now, but I will eventually make sure that it's offline ready, I don't like that way. No. What I'm not sure I should be doing is I've put components inside here as well, because they're so intrinsically stuck to this thing, right? The link notes in particular is basically just these two components, right?
Yeah.
You've got one for the Quill editor itself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's really lightweight there, but then logic-wise, it implements a mentions plugin here, which when the value is changed, when you see that sort of, when the Quill editor itself, when it fires off an event that says, hey, the text has changed in a certain way, it checks if it needs to do something via the mention list, and then we'll provide that list.
So Quill is how you're doing like that text area that you're typing in. Is that right? Is that?
Yeah. So there's this NGX Quill. Of all the solutions, I looked at a few other ones. Quill seemed really good. I do like it. I don't really get into the under the hood parts of it. The closest I got was I pulled the whole mention plugin for it out and made it my own. So there's a little bit of stuff left over. Where is it? It's in shared Quill mentions. So like in here, this whole file, I just stripped off of them and removed all the customization I didn't need. So like libraries generally provide multiple configurations for multiple cases. One of those would be like, okay, the mention character, you can configure that, right? This mention donation characters. What if you want another one? You might want them to be able to type hash. I'm like, I don't need that. I left that in for now. But honestly, it's going to be @ That's my choice. Yeah. So I would sort of strip that out. Same thing with allowed characters. I didn't even. It shouldn't be in the options, right?
Are those?
Do
you have like the umlauts and stuff for like Elvish?
No, it's for Cyrillic or Russian or Polish or German or any of those. Yeah, people play. I probably haven't included enough, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't really know where that came from. But yeah, I should probably include a lot more. Someone will be like, it's like one of those things where you limit a form to only, you must have 3 characters. And then poor Julie, whose last name is 2 characters,
Yeah, I hear you.
Anyway, I'm not sure that this component belongs in here, but at the same time, when I wanted to refactor the other day to make so I could create records from the linked notes component, it actually made a lot of sense, because then I didn't have to go back over to the app just to give this component what it needed, or rather this component what it needed from the store. It already had the data that it needed for the records. So yeah, I don't know. But the other library I have in here is the UI kit. And
okay. So this is like your not smart components. Is that how you say it now? I don't know.
Yeah, I guess so.
Brandon's
I mean,
sorry, we've got a lot of people in the chat. I know since you're sharing your screen, you can't see them, but Lars from In Depth is here. And he's saying you're missing some characters for Danish. And
yes, of course. Yeah.
Corbin actually came by and donated some money. I still don't know how this stuff works on Twitch, but thank you so much, Corbin, and for stopping by. And Brandon's here and he sends his fire emoji. So don't hide the facade before Brandon sees it.
Yeah. This feels a bit like airing dirty laundry, honestly.
No, this is great, man. Like I don't know. It's super interesting for me to be able to talk about the code, and I wanted to thank you, for sharing this. I feel like when you share your code, it's kind of like this weird intimate thing. Like you're saying, here's this stuff. Yeah. It's one thing to share your app. Like your app's one thing. Like it's kind of cool. It's all the finished or finished sometimes, but mostly finished. Mostly finished, and it's that's one thing. But looking at your code and your architecture and all those decisions, that's really cool. So thank you for sharing it. Brandon says facades are ... great.
Sure. Yeah. No, well, we were talking specifically about how at first my instinct was no, but then the documentation showed them using it, and I was like, okay, I'll give it a try. And I kind of like it now, only for the ability to give proper names to things, really kind of control that footprint of what things are, and occasionally do some stuff to maybe this doesn't belong here, like we said, but it can be nice. And then I have, so the UI kit is the other library, and I have this utils one, but I don't think it really makes sense as a library, because really all it is, I think I'm not even doing anything in there, but I needed a place to put this auto unsubscribe.
Sometimes you need a place to throw a function.
I was like, I don't know where else to put it, which is funny because I have another one in here in the UI kit, but this didn't feel like a UI thing, so I don't know.
Yeah. No, I hear you. That's my personal style, Evan, is to go to functions a lot. So I'll often have a lot of just pure functions standing out there, and if I do have some service or something else, I'll usually just import that function from the other place rather than if I do have a method, it's just using the function really. So yeah.
I mean, to show you another workspace that we have here, this one is more for my company, so I'll try not to share any particular details, but we have a Jira installation. So we also found out at one stage, and I gave a talk on this at a conference, that you can inject into Jira's text gadget JavaScript. And I was like, I wonder if I can run Vue inside there because it's lightweight enough. And sure enough, so I can build a Vue app, take the outputted string, including like coding the JavaScript and CSS and HTML into the single file and copying that text and paste it into this widget. That's our deploy process, but we can have an app. So we now have a number of these dashboards. And I was like, okay, well, this is the perfect use case for a monorepo, which is, I think, where I really started to look into this. And so we have an Angular app here.
So it's kind of
So
like
few
a
Angular apps
micro
and a Vue
front
app too.
end by widget. Is that kind of the idea?
Kind of. Yeah. I
It's
mean,
neat.
I don't. It's neat. I want them to be kind of. They're not interactive with each other. They could be,
Mhm.
but they use Jira as the back end, I guess, is the better way to think of it.
Yeah.
And they do so
Or as
because
a platform. Would that maybe be better? But
But
I don't know.
I mean, it's the back end. Like the tickets are the records
I
for the
see.
back end. And
Gotcha.
once you're so because you're inside Jira already, you don't have to do authentication, which was one of
Right.
the things that allowed it to happen quickly for us. Big enough company, you didn't want to do that. And yeah, so we were able to really quickly get up to speed, and then they gave me admin rights to at least our test Jira, so I could create new ticket types if I needed to, and really we're running with it. There's a lot of different things we're doing, but recently we upgraded to Vue 3 on one of our projects, and now we've got that inside the workspace as well. It's not perfect, but it is working, and I think that's also super cool. So we're able to, with this kind of architectural model, right? We have our Jira service more or less, which this was a hard thing to figure out how to share this between Vue and Angular, right?
Yeah.
I'm not sure we've even necessarily solved it, right? So we have our kind of barrel files. The
Yeah.
interfaces for sure are being shared. I mean, that makes
Mhm.
sense, and that's easy enough.
Yeah.
And I guess the constants as well, right? There's a lot of constants, just, a lot actually, and queries to build up your Jira queries and stuff. But then the service, I guess it's not really Angular, right? You can't make it Angular, and it's not an NGRX service either. I really went so far as to say my NGRX stuff, which I already had going, this badge service occasionally makes calls to that other Jira thing to do things
Right.
like, give me these constants, or even in some cases, and I don't think I have an example here, but it would in some cases call out to, one of these promises. So
Right.
you don't use the HTTP service at that stage. You just
Mhm.
use fetch under the hood or something.
Right.
I,
So
I, I don't
what
know.
these
I don't know
really
if it's the
are
right
then
way.
is these are async functions that return a
Mm-hmm.
promise inside the service, and that makes perfect sense to me. Why you would then use that in Vue and in Angular. That's what I would tend to do. So
Yeah, well, and I didn't want to I want this to have just one set of things that cut, because then I don't have to worry about if somehow they change the base URL for Jira. I don't have to update it in too many places. I don't have
right.
to mess with things like Jira's API is what it is.
Yeah.
One of the reasons we wanted the monorepo is because that's out of our control anyway. We want this layer of protection between us and that, and a single file is a better way to do it. But I do like working with observables, so I do have a couple things in here where I convert them from the fetch git, convert that back into an observable to work with it. But I'm not sure these are even going to stay here. I think because I made the choice to move them into their own different libraries. So the Angular or the NGRX kind of stores are often their own libraries, as opposed to the Jira one, which has the more Vue-oriented shared services.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a work in progress.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. I like that you mentioned you like working with observables, because I do too. I think so. My experiences, except for the things you've maybe seen on me trying to learn React on stream, is almost exclusively Angular. And so I got really excited when I saw RxJS, because I assumed, looking at RxJS, oh, this is clearly framework agnostic. Like I can learn RxJS and I'll be good to go in any framework.
Yeah,
And
you think.
you'd think it's surprisingly not very true. It was no, I shouldn't say that. It's more difficult than I thought it would be to work with RxJS, for example, with React, where I thought that would be a very simple thing. Like clearly they must have something like the async pipe, right?
Yeah, of course they would. Nope.
No.
Just when you think you have that under control, then you have this new reactivity thing that's like in Vue 3 as well.
Yeah. Corbin mentioned in the comments here, he's surprised you're using Vue 3 already in prod.
Well, prod. I mean, it's
prod. It's Jira.
Yeah, exactly. Jira is already what it is. There's always the fallback. So if they can't get something done, and what we're actually doing is we're taking an app that we more or less had built and ready to go, or deployed, and people are using, and that version is still available, but we have the beta version as we're adding the features back in. So we refactored the whole app. We just couldn't do anything else. It's not that it was so different, it's that we were also tied into Vuetify in the old app, and that made it a lot more difficult.
What is Vuetify?
Vuetify is like I guess it's like Bootstrap. Okay. I don't know what you'd call it, but it's basically a way to speed up your development of UI. So you'd have things like vcard, and that just gives you a card wrapper component.
Like a component library.
Yeah, it's a helper UI library sort of thing, but you end up getting really embedded into it, and when you want to like refactor something, you can't. And since they didn't have Vue 3 yet, we also doubly couldn't. So we're just rebuilding everything from the ground up, and it's not that hard. It's just a different way to think. I also only work in Angular generally. Before that, it was just vanilla. So I've played around with Vue. I've done a bunch of little mini projects in Vue, but this has been a lot more. I don't know. It's just a different way of thinking. Yeah, I solve problems in different ways when I'm working in streams.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's fun. It's fun to play around with new things and be able to do that even at work.
Yeah, I hear you. For me, one of the things I like most about like thinking in streams is just I feel like code gets a lot more readable and a lot more how should I say, like digestible when you read streams. Like there's sort of a barrier to entry there. You got to kind of understand the syntax, understand the operators, and that kind of thing. But once you've paid that initial investment, you can do, I think, in 50 lines what you could otherwise do in maybe like 200. So
definitely,
I don't know.
Yeah, one of my favorite examples was when they actually think through, the designers think through enough to know that they want, when you finish doing this thing, this should show some way for like 3 seconds, and then it should then fade out and go to this completed state. So it literally has 3 different states, and one of them is like on a timer thing. And like, how would you do that in like regular JavaScript?
Timer IDs.
Like, yeah, there are plenty of that, but it's only like 5 lines in RxJS. It's kind of impressive.
Yeah.
Not that it didn't take me 2 days to figure out the first time I did it, but
yeah. Yeah. So the thing I've learned with RxJS is unit tests are your friend. Like if you look up the test scheduler on RxJS and just like figure out how to use that and how the marble diagrams work, if you have something you're not quite sure how to do, write a unit test for it and see if you can get it to work in all scenarios, and then use it, because otherwise you may be doing something unintentional, even if it does work initially the first time. But yeah, just getting to the point where like in sort of the declarative paradigm, you get to this scenario where you're like tracing across the file the 5 different places this one variable changes, which is like this weird cognitive load that's super. I feel like it's hard to hand that off to someone else, especially. But even handing it off to your future self 3 months later, it's kind of like you kind of have to like jolt yourself. Like, oh yeah, that's right. These are all the places. But if you're doing it in a stream properly, you potentially have that all in just the one place, and say, rather than this some variable that's changing, this is now an observable that's completely defined right here in this little block of. I don't know.
Yeah. I really
my
really
main
like
draw
it as well.
to RxJS. So
and I guess the thing is, I have high hopes for this reactivity system to at least feel similar. Like, you're still doing a lot more definition, but I don't know. It's hard. It's still at the stage for me where I don't really understand how it works. Svelte is a similar thing where it has this reactivity that's built in, and even though I don't understand it, it has that feeling of, oh, this is going to yield some really cool things later, same as RxJS and streams did at first. So it'll take some time. It's not that I don't understand how it works. It's just I don't understand the full conventions yet. You're doing these use things. It's the same thing with React hooks. Like
Svelte is super interesting to me in general. The idea of the disappearing framework, so you're not actually shipping any Svelte. And I think there's it seems like Svelte is more reactive or ArcsJS friendly than other stuff. So
yeah, I
was asking if you've used this app in real time with multiple users. I don't know what he's getting at with that, but
Lars, do clarify which one you mean.
Yeah.
None of the stuff I've built is real time as in sockets, right? But yeah, we have I don't know, this Jira one, it's 90% of it is read only, so that's fine. And we actually have some backenders that have built some plugins. I think this branch I have checked out. We actually have.
Yeah, Lars is saying he's talking about the Dungeon Mastery one.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, no, but we have our actual. We went so far as to put our POM XML file Java stuff in here for Maven.
Oh, cool.
In the monorepo as well, because he was like, "Can I wrap the whole monorepo in this Java thing?" I was like, "That's not how we do it. You put your Maven stuff in here." He's like, "Don't tell the other backenders I'm doing this."
That's cool. We actually do at Gnarl, we do some stuff with Kotlin in our backend, so we do similar stuff with Maven, I believe.
Yeah,
that's not my bag, but
not my bag at all. I refuse. I tried to get me a few times.
Yeah, since Lars is here, I'm super interested in Dino as a legitimate like backend thing. Not that Node's not legitimate, but yeah, as something that could go ahead. Sorry,
I was going to say if the creator or co-creator of Node says that this is something that fixes the mistakes that they made when putting Node into place, well, it's worth checking out, right?
Dude, there's just something though with being able to shift or command click or whatever it is into a dependency and actually see the TypeScript though. Like when I first got into that in Dino, that was to see that stuff. Lars says he's ready for another Dino episode. We were supposed to have one on Friday, but my wife was actually in the hospital, so we had to cancel it. But Lars, I too am looking forward to a Dino one. But sorry, I'm taking over your train of thought, Evan. I'm sorry.
Not at all. I was just going to say, no, to answer your question, so far each dungeon master or game master has their own space. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see how Firebase hands that if people actually sign up. I'll need to put on the payment plan sooner rather than later. But in the future, there will be a time where I want at least them to have private notes and public notes in each of the things. I'll maybe go back to the app here.
Yeah. So private notes would be only for a DM, whereas public would be something.
So you want to share with your players, right? And so you could say, the campaign is open for public viewing. You can assume that the details of everything, it's fine to share, right? I don't mind if someone knows the details of the Elven city I created or something like that. So you could maybe, I don't know. This is all just workshopping because I haven't developed it yet. But
I was just saying it's a super interesting product you've built here. So and I agree. This is awesome.
Thanks. I'm really proud of it. Like I'm not the best designer, and I've had to do it all myself because I'm
it looks really good, Evan. Like it looks like a legitimate product. So I
do want
you're more artistic than you claim to be.
No, I have. It's I'm so in some ways I'm like this with photography. I was always good at editing and filmmaking and stuff like that. That I got, but taking pictures and framing them, it was hit or miss if I got it right. I understood the basics of how to frame things, but the lighting just never stuck. So it's the same way with design. I know good design. I sometimes hit the mark and get it right, but I don't know if that's the right amount of spacing between these titles. I don't know, like, if that's the best place to put this. There's a lot of stuff that I just don't quite know. And it's fine.
I feel like I'm in the same exact boat, but I would describe it differently. I feel like I know bad design. And so I know when I've done it. I just try to keep throwing stuff at the wall until it doesn't look bad.
No, just to wrap up that one train, I think in the future, the sessions themselves, I want to be able to plan in here too. So it would be nice if I could give access to all of my family and the players that are playing this the history so they can catch up as well and spot some things and reveals and stuff, because it's a lot now. I mean, this is a year of history that we've got already in here, and it's amazing. We've played I think 61 sessions as of last week over the course of a year and a half. But then I also want, like, okay, for next time I'm going to have these notes, and I don't want them to see that. So public versus private. But then they're not really going to have input devices, so I don't see that there's going to be any concurrency issues there. Yeah, I mean, it should be able to handle just one person, or it's been handling fine just me typing to Firebase, and I know that Firebase itself handles that part well. Even if multiple people are using it, it's still, they all have their own unique IDs, and it handles that.
Are you with your Quill stuff? Are you updating your Firebase documents like on keystroke, or are you doing it on like a submit?
I think it's on a delay.
Cool. It'd be pretty cool, but also kind of dangerous if you're doing it on every keystroke.
Well, let's look at the code, as I don't really remember. This code is, I mean, it's short, but it's really hard to follow through sometimes. Let me see.
Yeah. So
I have an output. So this actual component doesn't do any writing back to the store.
Okay.
Yeah. So when the notes are updated, it'll eventually emit this. Mm-hmm. Same thing. There's debounce. Whew. Okay.
Well, there's a debounce at least. Unfortunately, I'm a slow typer, so I don't know how much that would help with me.
Yeah,
but a debounce of 1 second is probably good enough.
It's probably okay. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. What else do you do, right? Do you batch it every so often? I'm not sure.
Yeah, so you could do. Is this just the value change of your form, the notes updated?
Sort of.
Okay, it's probably something with Quill, I imagine. Right?
Yeah, so Quill gives me the content change, and then I hit next with that value. But I think that's because I needed it somewhere up above as well, something like that. And then I need to know the current record that's been passed in, subscribe to that. And yeah, it's a little awkward, I still think. Oh, and I have to do this thing where I need to check for if they've added one of these custom items and make sure it's being inserted in the correct fashion so that it's tracked. And then that also has to be when I go into the server side. I need to add, I do a batch at that stage because I need to add the reference from that record to whatever it's referencing.
Right. Yeah, it's I don't know. This is the kind of thing, especially if you're using Firebase for the batches. I might do. I don't know. I don't want to like poo-poo on your project in any way, because this is really awesome for what it does and for how long you've been working on it. But whenever I get to batches or something like that, that's where I'd be like looking to do a cloud function to just have a thing to send out and let the function take care of all that stuff.
I at least figured out how to do that the other day, and I set up this to do that. Don't steal my codes. But then I found the batch mechanism, and I was like, I don't really need to do this in a function. Yeah. So I didn't finish writing it and just stuck with it in the actual service itself for the delete. The delete was the most important one, to go through and say, like, okay, well, I want to make sure the references are removed from all the other records that it might be referencing. Like, if I'm deleting that, it needs to be gone.
Yeah. So like if you delete a character, you have to not only delete the character, you also have to scan all your other collections for anything that may reference that character and make sure all
go to my test one, for example, right? So here in the not that one here.
Yeah, I've been through this problem too.
So if I reference Kendra here,
sorry.
Then I go into Kendra and delete Kendra. I don't know why it doesn't refresh automatically, but I didn't want to lose the text in here, right? Because that still is important.
Really cool. That's really cool.
That's what it does, is it makes sure you don't lose the text, but it removes the reference to a record. So yeah, that one, that was what prevented me from going live earlier then, because I had it almost ready. And I've just been adding more stuff, but that one was like, I need to get that
is
done.
really cool, Like, especially, I don't know, as an engineer working with Firebase, that is pretty cool that you're able to do that and persist that name even though you've removed it from the collection. That's really cool.
That's Quill offers a nice way of doing that. I mean, when you look at it sort of under the hood, it's a DOM element with a certain sort of set of data attributes, but because it's built that way, you stringify it, it works super well. I don't know. Yeah. It's a lot of text though. That's the other thing, that this is all text, right? You're used to dealing with records. So yeah, they have references and they have objects, but this is a lot of actual bits to do. I don't know. Not my strong suit, the kind of more back-endy side of stuff, but yeah, I enjoy this a lot. Really developing this is a total pleasure.
It seems like an awesome project, man. Corbin asks, how long have you been working on this? We had already talked about this, Corbin. Maybe you missed it, but he's been working on it since January, which I was like, okay, so 4 months. And then I realized it's January.
Like 4 months. I want to see if I can see how far back this actually goes. Like, as a user, what is this? March. No, wait, 6 months ago. Maybe it hasn't been that long. It feels like it's been a lot longer, though. Yeah, 8 months ago. Okay, yeah, good. Yeah, definitely January.
It call us out on our different things. I'm just so. I think the big thing for me is seeing you being able to work on a project for 10 months or a side project for 10 months. I have a hard time, I feel like, sticking with one for more than 1 month. I'm just kind of like, I've learned some stuff from this. I don't think I'll be able to get it out. Or I never really intended to get it out. And I just kind of move on to the next. But I want to be more, Evan, I want to be more like you and be able to stick with something like this to get it.
But I mean, Zach, this is the first time that this has happened for me. And it's only happened because I need it for my own campaign. Right? I mean, I'm using work.
It's a huge thing, isn't it?
I'm using this app Workflowy for like everything that's in my head, and all this stuff is in my head too. But it just got so massive. Let me go back to my D&D campains, and then
it's funny how that works too, because I feel like I always like go through it mentally, like this would be all this much, and then you're like, wait, what? This is all the stuff with your campaign.
Yeah, right? This is all the campaign stuff. And I mean, I have a lot of other stuff in Workflow as well, because I just, when I take notes, I put it in here. But, little stuff like this of like, he picked up these 2 bottles of expensive wine at one stage.
Gotta track that in the inventory.
I better track that somewhere. And like we do use D&D Beyond for a lot of our character stuff. And like, there's other apps that help, but at least if I can move the story and like the character details out of here and into a place where it's at least, I don't know, more interconnected. Because that was the other problem. I was like, okay, even while I'm DMing, I'll be like, okay, so you guys were talking to this person last week, this halfling Jenny is the morgue attendant. Okay, that's cool. But then you went to this place. Where was that? And I got to scroll up to find, now you're in this room and there's Gearworth. Okay, blah. What voice did he have again? Oh, nervous British man. Yeah, that's fine. It gets a lot, and I've already been seeing that using this has helped me do that a lot faster during the games. So
good deal.
Dog food.
It certainly seems like it beats out Command F on your one massive document.
So definitely does, because you don't even remember what it's called half the time. Like what was that NPC's name?
And if you got the Algolio search where you can, I think Algolio will like help you. Oh, coming soon. Okay. But if you could get something where you can't quite remember the spelling, but you could maybe remember the first word, it seems like, or the first letter rather, it feels like your search can kind of do that now. I don't know. You started typing and it was a pretty exhaustive list, it felt like. So
yeah, it's indexing the whole thing, so it's picking out just the string.
Okay, so you're just like string match here,
which is fine because the titles are going to be short. You don't really want anything too long. I mean, there are a few that get a little longer, but there shouldn't be.
Those Power Rangers. Oh, sorry, Rangers of Power.
Rangers of Power. Yeah. What are you gonna do with the home game?
Well, you got the squirrel. You might as well have Power Rangers.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of jokes. Oh, they did it. No, well, I could go into that for hours. The other thing I wanted to make sure we talked about was Tailwind, because now I have like no CSS. That there's still some, but there's very little handwritten CSS anymore. It's all done with classes,
Nice.
and that's crazy. It like let's look at this container here, right? It looks a little bit ugly.
Could you make that a little bit bigger? We're having a hard time seeing it.
Yeah, of course.
Let's see.
And let me move this. So like this section here is background white, position relative, display flex, item center, justify between, right? Like all these things. It takes a bit to learn the syntax, but it's not too bad. And I mean, it took me maybe 4 hours to find the illustrations today to get this homepage up. But the actual code of it was maybe like 2 hours at the most to put this all together. Most of this was just the writing. I really love
your icon too. It was really cool when you sent me that for the little splash we used. Is there any significance to this aside from the
a little bit? There's a hint of Harry Potter, right, going on there, but
the Three Brothers kind of thing.
Yeah, the Deathly Hallows kind of thing, but no, the three pillars of gameplay, I guess, was the main reference.
What are the three pillars of gameplay?
Put me on the spot. Exploration is one. Okay. Combat is another, and I guess the third one is something to do with social and interactions. I forget what the actual term for it is.
Interesting. Is that a D&D thing? Or?
Yeah, it's something that the D&D Wizards of the Coast kind of came up with as one of the, probably, I don't know which edition. I haven't been playing for very long anyway. Anyway, I like that, and I like the colors that came out, and finding the colors for the different things as well later. That was a pleasure.
I really like the way that looks with the little squares around it, around the linkable things and the color coding.
Yeah,
super cool.
It bothers me they're not clickable yet, especially because I put cursor pointer on it, so I need to make that work soon. Just to mention again, Tailwind. So if you look at the actual that linked notes component, because it comes from somewhere else, has a fair amount of CSS, but I'm even in there using @apply from Tailwind. And then if you go to the actual component themselves in the app, there's like no CSS here anymore. I have a lot of cleanup to do in here.
And that's just because you have in your HTML the class, and that's it.
Exactly. So in here you have all the stuff that you need. And if you're being repetitive, well, maybe you should refactor that into a component anyway, but it gives you the flexibility to have one be slightly different. So, and what sold it for me was having the autocomplete, the IntelliSense, so to speak, in here. So if I'm not exactly sure what the text color I'm looking for is, I at least have my whole list in here and be like, oh yeah, I want green.
Is that like a Tailwind language service you have to make that work, or how is the IntelliSense coming into play? Oh, Tailwind, nice.
Tailwind IntelliSense. Oh, yeah.
Question answered.
Question answered. Yeah.
Awesome.
I mean,
what is and that easy? It's very reassuring.
It's very nice. Yeah, and it pulls off of your Tailwind config. So I have all my sort of custom colors here. I mean, technically what you should do is not extend the defaults, but I'm still kind of in dev mode and haven't decided on my full color suite yet. I should just set the colors and have those be the only one available, because it generates a massive CSS file. So in Angular, at least, you need to use Webpack, or if you're using Post CSS for whatever, to actually apply purge CSS. And what that does is it scans through your HTML or TypeScript, in my case, files. It has a few sort of safe lists, but then it will purge and remove all the CSS that's not used.
Okay.
Which is super good, but it means when you're doing stuff with dynamic classes, like you might have a button or something that you pass in a prop and that builds the class name, you have to do that in a different way.
Or else you're going to get rid of CSS you actually need because you're going to think it doesn't need it. Is that the idea?
Like I have this ugly switch case with way too much code for these brush titles.
That SVG, though. Look at that.
That's beautiful. One. There's 5 of them. So I thought I had this cool idea here to have this brushed title, right, for the different sections, and they are different SVGs, right? But I didn't want to hard code them, which now seems stupid because I'm not going to add any more of these, so I probably shouldn't do that. But so I have this component which sort of randomizes it, and every time you load it does a different thing. But then I was running into the problem where they weren't taking the correct colors because the CSS was being removed because it wasn't actually in there. So I got around that by just doing it this way, and
there you
go. Not doing it with the color class name, but instead doing it based off of what they are. It's less than ideal, but you can also, if it works, it works, and you can safe list certain components, like I said, and that works. So overall, I don't have that much custom CSS. Certainly not as much as I did before I started using this, and I like it. I like it a lot. It prevents me from writing display flex over and over and over and over again, which I tend to do. Yeah, and it's a pretty cool thing.
Does Tailwind have like grid support too?
Yeah. Okay. What I found of the grid support was, it has some baked in, but I needed to sometimes create my own, and I think that's probably the best way to do it because grid can be so specific,
Yeah.
But then again, this saves you from repetition, right? If you're setting up a unique layout, write the CSS for it. Don't even bother to do it this way unless you think you're going to reuse it. Technically, I shouldn't have put these here at all. They should just go into a CSS file where I'm using them.
Right.
Because I kind of am only using them in one place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, it's fun. It works.
It's fun. It works.
Cool. Well, Evan, thanks so much for coming on and chatting with me. I did want to ask you about your history as a filmmaker. I saw you went to USC for filmmaking. We had talked about this earlier before we started. That's a really exclusive thing to get into. And what happened there? I don't know. Do you have time to talk about it more? Or
yeah, of course.
Okay.
It's fine.
I know we're getting right there for you. So
it's all right. Whatever. I stayed up the last few days in preparation. So I grew up in Los Angeles, and when you're in LA, especially, I don't know, being a creative type, you kind of either go into music or film. And my dad's already a musician, so I was like, okay, I'm going to be a filmmaker. And even like, a young age, I was like, yeah, I'm going to do film. And I would make little videos, and they finally opened a film class at my high school, and I was like the first one in the door. It felt like that was what I was supposed to be doing with my life. I remember the first time I filled out my taxes, there was like, what's your profession? And even though I worked at a bookstore, I was like, filmmaker. That's my thing. And so I got into a really prestigious, very freaking expensive film school. And it was good, like there were the first 2 years, there were only 50 of us. We got let in first. And then 2 years later, another 50 were let in. So the graduating class was 100. And it was for cinema, television production. Really good, really interesting. But then you graduate, and like I think with a lot of colleges or universities, you don't really have a job set for you right outside of that. So end up working odd jobs here and there, saying like, I'm an artist, I'm going to make it happen. And I got married quite young as well. And when we had our daughter, only 4 years after college, and it was like, that's not making any money. And it doesn't seem like it's going to for a long time. And then we moved to Europe because we were panicked and all this other stuff. And by the time we kind of settled down, I realized that what I was doing to make money was this kind of hobby I had, which was coding. And just kind of building little small websites with Dreamweaver, which turned into doing them with WordPress, which turned into sort of figuring out PHP and template systems, and then doing a little more, like just piecemeal. And it was like, I remember even 5 years ago when we sort of left Ireland and moved to Spain, I still hadn't quite clicked this is my job yet until I finally got a developer job. And I was like, wait, all of the money I made over the past 2 years, bar like a few thousand here and there for making little short films, has been from web development. Is this what I am? Honestly, like, it was a surprise, even though I read CSS tricks and did all of this, that was my world in a lot of ways. It just didn't register. And then one day I was just like, what am I still pretending to be doing this for? Yes, I'm okay at it and I like editing, but this is way more interesting and there's so much more room to grow. And once I picked onto that, it was like the doors just opened, and I am not the best at this. There's no, hubris here. Like, there's so much still to learn, but I'm really good at it. And it's really enjoyable when you're good at something and you're able to do that thing, That's been one of the greatest gifts of the life we've had so far, is finding this sort of career path and really just resonating with it and feeling like, yes, I enjoy this so much.
Absolutely. There's just something about, I don't know, front end development where you're. I've talked about this on the several times. The empathy of just like writing some code and like seeing it right there in the browser, like through your users, and just seeing as you do X. Like I'll normally have like my notes right here, and just have like, okay, I want to make this checkbox, and let's make sure we get the feature done, and then I'll check it off. And then we keep going. And there's something there. It feels like, I don't know. I was resonating a lot with what you were just saying about just like creating, being able to be good at something too. It's definitely a nice thing to feel. But yeah.
And I like the front end in particular because it is so much more fluid and experimental. And we're a little more of a throwaway culture, I think, as well, because of that. This code we write today, we'll just get rid of tomorrow because new patterns come out. And
don't worry, we'll reinvent this again about 3 times in the next 5 years. So,
but the thing is, I've seen that pattern coming where we're like, this is just the same thing that this was, 6 years ago. Like, micro front ends is nothing new. That's been around forever. And it's like, yeah, that's true. And I don't think micro front ends are the best thing. They're like one tool in the set. But these new things, these old things that we're seeing come up again are better this time around. We learned our lessons from the first time that got us caught into certain patterns, which, et cetera. And they're coming back around, like utility CSS. That's a great example with Tailwind. That's been around for a long time. I mean, inline styles are technically that, but it's not quite the same. Having them as a class is very different than having them as an inline style. And there's articles written on that. But it's coming back around in a better fashion.
It comes back around, and this time it comes bearing VS Code plugins for IntelliSense and just better tools. Like that's one of the coolest things I think, maybe working at Narwhal and seeing the stuff that's happening with NX. It just feels like such a cool tool set, and to be able to be working on this and to be able to share that, so that Evan Payne from Spain did know you from Adam like a month ago, and now we get to chat about cool tool sets and cool shared experiences we had, even though we're half a world away. It's a world we live in, Evan. It's quite a world we live in.
It's quite a world.
Cool, man. Well, so going into film, it's interesting because you said you don't feel like you're super artistic, but you got into the film course or into the film set.
No, don't mistake me. At the core, artistic as in terms of art, like I before I was a filmmaker, I wanted to be a poet. When I was like 9 or 10, I started reading really, really early, and that was always one of my strongest suits. Like, I've read fantasy books since I was like 4, at the very least, and like, it comes out in different ways. What I was wanting specifically is I'm terrible at drawing and painting and those sort of things, like the visual arts. not very great at. But yeah, themes and intent and meaning behind pieces, I'm definitely resonate with that. Don't have the focus to follow through on them in the same way that I do with coding. Smaller pieces, sure. Like I have a lot of short form fiction and things like that I've written, which I don't really publish because, I don't want to get into that world necessarily. But yeah, like I said, in LA, if you're a creative type at all, you end up doing a lot of different things like that.
Yeah. Cool. Well, still not every LA person gets into USC. So that's it's an interesting thing. But
yeah, I'm a bit disillusioned with the university systems in general. I just think it's so overpriced, especially being over here in Europe.
For that to happen when you're stuck with a huge student debt bill, right?
Yeah, that's true.
I'm in the same category, but yeah.
Yeah, no, but it is a bit much. It's one of the reasons we left the U.S. is that not the university thing, but just that you had to pay for everything out the nose, and there's no safety net for you. Especially being younger, like I think 28, 26. I don't remember anymore when we had my daughter, who's 12 now. So yeah, 26. Yeah, it didn't feel safe. It's better. I mean, it's not better now. Things are crazy, but I wouldn't be so worried now necessarily. But then again, these last 10 years, almost 11 years in Europe have been great too. Seen the world explored. It's been really good.
Yeah.
Found a true calling.
Y'all have had quite the adventure, and just playing. There's something about playing D&D with your family that's I don't know. that just seems like all you have to say is that, and I assume you have a great family life. So
yeah.
I can kind of tell the way you talk about your family, you care about them a lot too. So that's I think the most important things about being a human. We can have jobs that are fulfilling and all these things, but I think love at the end of the day is the thing that makes this life worth living. So
it is, and it generates more of itself, and it calls better things into your life as well. I mean, it's easy to get bogged down in things, but you have to focus on negative sides as well. But to be able to focus on the positive and to show love and appreciation for the people around you is just great. It's such a gift, and it brings back rewards.
Yeah. Well, and also the way it focuses you. Sometimes for the good, sometimes for the better. But when I suddenly realized, now I have to support a family of children, it's like, okay, time to stop messing around. It's time to get serious and write some code. So,
for sure. Yeah, it focuses you.
Cool. All right, Evan, I won't keep you awake too much longer, but thank you so much for coming on. I feel like we need to have you on again soon. Maybe when you do some more stuff with your D&D project, or if you just ever want to talk, that would be awesome.
I think it's great. I have a plan to, by the end of November, do some other big sort of release. And I have a few more days off planned for that. So yeah, we can talk about more of that.
Very cool. I could be like your PR thing. We could be like ZLS does Dungeon Mastery. So that'd be cool. And to the comments section, thank you so much, Corbin, for the subscription. It was very kind of you. And to Brandon and to Lars and everyone hanging out in chat, thanks so much for hanging out with us. This was awesome. Yeah. Evan, thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing everything. Thanks for using NX and showing us how you share Vue and Angular. That was a great little piece of a little snippet to share. So thank you for that.
Once we get a little further along with it too and work out the architectural kinks, I'll write an article or something like that.
That would be awesome. You need to get together with Lars, get that on in depth or something like that. That'd be cool.
Sure. If I can find the time. Always so short these days.
It's like family, and then you got your Dungeon Mastery, and then maybe you'll get around to that article. I hear you.
There's a lot. But yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it. And it's nice to talk to anyone, honestly, in this community. I don't know. It's a great bunch, and all the chat as well. I know a few of you from afar. I'm glad you could attend today. So nice.
Yeah, ZLS has a pretty cool chat. Thanks y'all for coming by. And yeah, we've got Aaron Frost coming by tomorrow. He's going to be talking a little bit about his experiences setting up ngconf. It should be a good time. So make sure you stop by tomorrow too. And yeah, well, Evan, I look forward to having you again in November when you have your new launch. It'll be super cool to see how things have progressed. So
nice. Thanks, Zach.
Sweet. Thanks, man. All right. See y'all. Catch you tomorrow.